Hello, it's DIY Guy 123 here again. We're here with a do-it-yourself video, and I'm going to tell you how to stop a leak, repair a leak in your Delta faucet. It's going to take no time at all, and anybody can do it. So this is a Delta bathroom two-handle faucet, which means it's got a separate handle for the hot and the cold, unlike some faucets that have a single handle for both temperatures. They're very, very basic. They're good quality, and they do have a lifetime warranty. So if you have local hardware store is a seller of Delta products, they likely have a very good relationship with the rep, and they will stock a supply of repair parts. So the first thing you have to do if you're having a leak is diagnose where's the leak coming from. So we know that this leak is coming from the hot water side because when we fiddle with the hot water tap, like when we just kind of turn it on just like 4 or 5 degrees, it will stop the leak. But if you turn it off all the way, the leak starts. So look at that. Drip, drip, drip. So we know that it's the hot water side that's leaking. And also, there are really only two types of leaks due to wear. One is a leak out here with the faucet, and that means that you have a spring right here, spring, and a seal. I think they also call it a seat that needs to be replaced, okay? So little tiny parts worth 10 cents, but that's what they look like. If it's leaking out of around here, then you need a new cartridge. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. First thing you want to do is pull your drain stop up so you don't lose any parts down there, okay? Then the second thing, and look at me closely, look right in my eyes. You want to turn the water off before you start this. I saw another video on YouTube which was pretty well done. It was actually way more professional than anything I'm doing as far as like the editing and so on. But they neglected to say you've got to shut the water off before you start. And someone commented that they're, you know, just learning and they didn't shut the water off and they pulled the cartridge out and flooded their bathroom. So we're going to do that first. So what you do then to shut the water off is underneath your sink here, by plumbing code or building code or whatever the code it is, you're going to have these shut-off valves. They look like this. So here's one right here. They look kind of, they're different types, but that's one kind. Now, this would be one of the cheaper ones because it's got a plastic handle. And sometimes the plastic handles break, you know. Here, my cold water tap has a plastic handle. The hot water tap has no handle, which means it broke off or it was stolen. And of course, in this case, I need the handle on the hot water tap. So I'm just going to remove it from this spare faucet that I have, or sorry, spare valve that I have. And with any luck, the reason why that plastic handle broke was not because the valve is seized. Let's see. Oh. Okay, well, the screw is seized on there, and I couldn't get the, now I see what happened. I could not get the screw to come out of that valve, but it's okay because the screw is seized in there so tight I just used a screwdriver to shut the valve. So I basically went like this, and I'm sure when I go to open the valve again, I'll just do that. All right, so that worked. You want to shut the valve off, you know, fully, but you're not trying to crank these things like the head of an engine bolt. Like, if you do that, you'll guarantee they're going to start to leak on you, these valves. And even that is dripping a bit in the closed, well, barely. Anyway, the valves are 18 years old. There's probably a buildup of minerals and that kind of stuff. And you just don't ever need to crank them hard off or hard on. Oh, wow. So that is, now we're in good shape. I should be able to turn this on. I expect a little spray of pressure, but then it should go right away. More than I thought. So I guess I have not fully turned that valve off. So let's see if I give that another little turn. I'm just turning it back on and off because maybe there's some mineral deposits on the seal or on the seat, and maybe that's why it's not shutting off properly. No? Okay, so, all right. More complicated again. These things don't ever tend to be easy for me. So that valve does not fully shut off. I'm not able to get rid of that trickle of water. And I'm not willing to crank the valve super tight. So, put some water in the lens. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna just shut the water off in the house and then bleed the pressure down by running a sink in the basement till all the water pressure in the house goes away. And then we'll be able to remove that and take a look at it. I'm not really thrilled that that valve is not shutting off, but that's not gonna stop me from fixing this leak. Maybe I'll fix the valve at some point. Okay, so there are a couple of ways to stop the water pressure or reduce the water pressure in your house. One is you can just turn the breaker off to the pump. So if you go to your electrical panel, you can either find what's been done here, somebody clearly marked pump, which is a common one in hot water heater. Those are common breakers to be clearly marked because when people go away for a week in the winter or something like that, they often will shut those two things off. So I can either flick the breaker off, so like that, and now when I run the tap in the house, the pump is unable to cut in, or there's a valve I can shut off in the basement, and I'll show you that. Okay, so here I am down in the basement. Now this house has the water pump out in the well, so there's no electrical pump here in the basement itself. I have the hoses coming in from outside, and then it goes to this pressure switch, and this is what cuts the pump in and out when the pressure of the house drops. And I've got a gauge there showing the pressure. And then the very next thing is a main house shut off. So I've just shut the whole house off. When you put the lever this way, there's a little paddle inside of the valve that blocks the flow of water from going through. When you put it this way, the paddle is facing like that and the water goes through. I mean, it's not quite that way. Anybody that's seen the inside of a valve knows I'm not quite accurate, but you get the idea. So I've shut the shut the water pressure off to the house. Now all the lines are still fully charged and fully pressurized. So what I need to do is relieve the pressure in the hot water lines. You don't need to drain the whole hot water tank and drain all the lines or any of that, because the faucet that I'm working on is an upstairs faucet and I'm now down in the basement. So since we're in the basement, we can certainly turn on the hot water in a tap in the basement. Any fixture in the basement will take care of it, and wait a couple of minutes. And in fact, I bet if I was upstairs right now, I'd hear a sucking sound through that faucet. Okay, here we are back upstairs again, and I'll just hold the camera close to the faucet. I can definitely hear a sucking sound. Once you hear that and you see the water's not dripping anymore, you can shut off the fixture that's in the basement that's actually draining. Because if you leave it on, I don't know if you noticed, but my hot water tank is like 5 or 6 feet tall and it's standing beside the sink. And I think that it will eventually drain that hot water tank down to the height of the faucet that's the tap is on. So, you know, since it was a hot water line, I had to do the hot water piece. But if it was a cold water line, you obviously don't need to worry about draining your hot water tank. Anyway, I'm gonna go shut the faucet off in the basement, knowing that there's no water pressure in this line and I can comfortably work on this, even though the valve below was malfunctioning. I mean, when I say valve below, I mean below the sink itself. Okay, a couple things. I turned the faucet off in the basement, so the line is no longer draining. And in fact, when I went down there, the flow had reduced greatly, which makes me doubt my comment about draining the hot water tank. Maybe there's some kind of anti-backflow siphon thing or something. I don't know. I'm not a plumber, so anyway, long story short is I shut that valve off, and we're now ready to go. So to get this lever off, you have to, and there are different styles. Sometimes if it looks like there's a part that's screwed onto the main part, you unscrew the handle like this, take it off, and then you have access to a hex set screw. In this case, this was already loose, so in this case, and it's difficult to see, there's a 6-sided hex lock key there. Maybe you can see it in there. And it was actually loose when I bought the house. I didn't have to loosen it, but you certainly will have to on yours if it's tight. And back it off. Doesn't need to come out, just back it off a turn or two or a couple turns. And then this handle should slide right up. So now you're looking at the lock nut on the top here, and inside of that is the cartridge. So we're going to leave it in the open position, okay? So I remember that the handle is facing me, it's open, and Now we're going to release this lock ring. I'm actually going to drain the water out of here in case I drop the GoPro camera. There we go. There we go. Okay. So my pliers are not the best. They are adjustable pliers, and if I don't think this is going to work easily, I'm going to go get a wrench that's the proper size. I really don't like using adjustable. Oh, the whole thing is turning. Whole thing is turning. All right, so I'll be back. Okay. So this one's a bit tricky. So what happens is when you install the faucet like this, you drop this piece down. Of course, it looks all assembled when you're installing it. You drop it down through the sink, and then you put a lock nut underneath it. Well, this has been in here for 18 years, a little bit of corrosion. For whatever reason, the lock nut was not gripping the was not pulling this part down and clamping the sink enough. And this little lock collar here was tight enough that when I was trying to turn it, or take it off like this, the wrench was turning the whole thing. So I got underneath it, used a pair of channel lock pliers, that's all I could really get in there, and then tightened up the lock nut on the bottom, and only then was I able to do this. Now, there are a bunch of different ways you can get that lock nut off, or this this collar off right here. You can use cheap channel lock pliers, medium grade channel lock pliers, very high end and very large channel lock pliers, or an adjustable wrench. And I think this is probably like a plumber's best friend. I see, most plumbers have adjustable wrenches. I'm more of an automotive mechanic guy than a plumber guy, so I have a full set of wrenches. And when you're dealing with a nut that's hard to come off, or a bolt that's hard to come off, you're asking for trouble when you use an open-ended wrench like that. A box end wrench like that is much, much better for taking off a stubborn nut or bolt that has the potential to round the corners if you're using one of these. So I happen to have it. It's a 27mm wrench, and just an eighth of a turn loosened it up, and now I can get it out by hand. So before I take that out though, I am going to show you something. When I tightened that lock nut underneath, I reset the orientation of this faucet, so now it only goes like this instead of being from here to here, it's now from here to there. So I'll fix it after, but for now, I'm going to remember that the faucet is open all the way and it's pointing at like 4 o'clock. Okay, so I got my lock nut off, and I want to pull this cartridge, and that's what you're looking at right there is the cartridge. I want to pull that out, and it came out. Now, I'm going to put it down in the exact same orientation as it came out so I don't forget. And this little gray doodad was in there like that. Okay. So, now we're looking down at the seat and the spring. You can't see the spring, but the seat's there. And I'll use a pair of needle nose pliers to pull that bad boy right out of there. Oh, there's the seat. And there's the spring. And to tell you the truth, I would not have guessed that the spring would wear. I thought it's not the spring that wears, it's the rubber seat that would wear. But now that I take that out, hopefully you can see that, the metal on the top of that spring is completely shiny, where the rest of the metal is, I wouldn't say rusty, but it's got some corrosion buildup. That means that the spring did wear. So let's compare it to a brand new one and see if there's any noticeable difference in height. Well, there's not, and to be quite honest with you, it looks like the old spring is like well, I'd say they're the same, or maybe the old spring is just like a micrometer higher. I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna put the new spring in, because even though they're the same length, maybe the old spring lost some of its spring force. You take your spring and you put it the small diameter side of the spring facing up, and the larger diameter facing down, and then you take this rubber cone and you drop it over like that. So that's how the spring and the rubber seat go together. Then you take a regular drinking straw, and now I have them in my hands, and you drop the drinking straw into don't let it go, but drop it in that little spot, and it just guides the seat and the spring down in their proper place. And now I should be able to take my thumb and pop it in place. It's like many things, it has to go in completely parallel to the slot that you're pushing it in. Little finger, probably better than the thumb anyway. Getting it in there. Okay, so that's in there and I can feel. I'm just going to check the bottom of this. There's some mineral buildup right here. And I'm going to take a piece of like 800 grit emery cloth and just kind of take any buildup off of there, because that might be abrasive on the new seal. So I'm going to do that and then I'll be back. Okay, so we're back. I used a little bit of very fine emery cloth to clean it off. It was all brown just due to probably iron deposits. I don't know what kind of metal it is, but I wouldn't say it was rust. I'd say it was more like iron buildup or something. Anyway, so silly gray, whatever that thing is, keeps popping out, but stick it back in there. Okay, so the other thing I'm doing is just inspecting the O-ring, because if the O-ring is bad, it will leak up the top of this little part of the faucet. Okay, so, and the other thing is you can see this opening. Oh, sorry. You can see this opening right here, and it's how it's kind of moon-shaped, half moon-shaped. As you're turning it, you're moving that opening over top of the rubber seal, or you're closing it. So you're alternating between putting the open part over that rubber seal or the flat part. And of course, when it's the flat part, it does not have any water that flows. So that's what that is for. So let's see if we can fit this back in and not be sad that we started this project. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, there we go. It just fit in there like it was supposed to. Wow. Okay, let's thread this bad boy on right here. Thread it on by hand, of course. And when you put it back on, like, look at how long this wrench is. This is meant for, like, taking huge nuts and bolts off. You know, you don't want to load up too hard on this. Like, just there. That's all. Because this nut, all it does is hold that cartridge down in place. That's all it does. There's no seal between the nut itself and the cartridge, or the nut and this part. So it really doesn't need to be on there tight. Okay, so that's on there. Now I'm faced with this problem. So what I'm going to do is loosen the lock nut up from underneath, rotate this handle to the, parallel position, and then tighten the lock nut again. Okay, so now that's straightened out, and I'm going to go turn the water back on, see what happens. Hopefully things don't blow up over here. Now, even though I turned the faucet upstairs off and the faucet that I was using down here to drain the lines off, everything's off. The toilet was flushed in the house, so I'm expecting as soon as I turn this valve on, I will expect to hear water flowing. And, it's probably a good idea to not slam the valve on. Like, if you're going to turn it on, I turn it on slowly. Not a big deal. Maybe it wouldn't matter if you slam the valve on, but the toilet that was flushed should have filled up. Oh, it already filled up in just the amount of time I was walking here. Okay, so I do want to point out that anytime you've messed around with a valve in your, a faucet valve, or like the main shut off to a house or anything like that, it's normal to have a little bit of sediment be released from the pipes. Remember, I had the pipes fully drained for about half an hour, and now they're filled up again, and just maybe that action causes some of the silt in the pipe to be released. So it's not uncommon at all to have some discoloration in your water when you turn the tap back on. Also, you notice that when I turned it on, the water didn't come out right away. That's because there was air in the lines. When you turn the taps back on and flush the toilet and the showers and all that stuff for the first time, you may hear a bunch of sputtering and spitting, and that's okay. Just wait till the air purges and then it'll be steady. So this is a cold water tap that never had a problem. Yep, you can definitely see the water is discolored. It's not normally that brown. Yeah. And as a pro tip, if you're, I'm not a pro, but I do have a few of those tips. If you are on town water, you don't have your own well, but you're on municipal water, and you notice like a water truck's been, or a, water department trucks in your area, they've been running like the fire hydrants to flush the lines and all that kind of stuff. you know that the water from the main line into your house is full of silt and stuff, dirty water. So what I would recommend is when you decide you're going to use the water again and the work in the road is completed, I would run your cold water on one tap, the tap that's closest to where the water comes into your house. I'd run that tap until the water's clean. Also, you know, if you can do it, wait till your neighbors flush your lines out on the main road so that everything in front of your house is clean before you even turn the taps on in your house. But anyway, if you do that, the cold water tap on the faucet that's closest to where the water comes into your house, then you minimize the amount of silt that you're bringing into your house. If you use the hot water tap, you're drawing all that silt into your hot water tank. And of course, a lot of it will settle in the bottom of your tank and you know, eventually that could damage your tank. So that's my advice on if your municipal water's been worked on recently. So let's go for the gusto and see what happens here. There's hot water. And all that line is filling up. You can hear it. Any minute now that's going to start to spit water. Okay. So I worked that valve back and forth a few times because, you know, those things, they do tend to corrode shut or corrode stiff over time. And so I worked that on off several times. I do want to point out that when you're doing this, you may get a little drip, you know, a small drip of water that got past the seal. What you want to watch, and that's not a big deal, like it's common, I don't say you want it, but in an over valve that's common. What you want to make sure though is when you're done fiddling with that, you've got it all the way open or all the way closed, there's no more leak. And you know, that is the case. I'll check this in 15 minutes and in an hour, and I'll check it tomorrow, and then I'll never check it again. And so that's how you would want to make sure about that. While I'm under here, I'm going to try to turn this valve as well, just to see if it needs to be flushed as well. And I do feel corrosion and crap on there, like just doesn't turn very well. You can actually see a drip of water. When I turn that valve, it does drip. But what's probably happened is by me opening and closing that and knocking a little tiny bit of corrosion off of there. Now, yeah, see, that one works. That one works fine. But by cleaning the seat and knocking the corrosion off of that shaft, when I need to use that valve in another 5 years, it'll probably work. Whereas if I hadn't done that, you know, it's possible it might not have worked. It might have been frozen. So now what we're going to do, I see a drip right there. I'm going to just absorb that. So now the drip is no longer there. And I'm going to just let that sit while we're talking. I'll clean up these dirty drips that come out of the valve. And yeah, so we're looking good because there's no drip here, and if we hadn't fixed it, there would be by now. So if you like my videos, subscribe. I'd love to share my do-it-yourself repairs, and good luck with your projects.